How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I think winter is finally over.
You could not be more wrong.
And we're getting back to work on Frankenstein. It's starting to warm up a bit and it's actually comfortable to work out here, which is going to make it a lot more enjoyable. So last time I was working on Frankenstein, got the engine pulled, got all the holes that will not be used marked for when we shave the bay. And I also worked on removing just about everything off of the firewall. Something I also found inside the car was this bit of rust up here. So the seam seal obviously is the problem there. So I will be working on that at some point. So first thing I wanted to do was try and track down how I could access it from this side, because obviously the water is getting in from the top and it's sitting in there causing it to rust. But I took everything apart and I cannot see any access to that. It's actually right in behind here and I don't want to cut into any of the frame or anything to get to it. So I may just have to access it from the inside, cut that chunk out of there and try and seal it back up as best I can. I even took the hood hinges off and there was some crust under here, so this is gonna have to get cleaned up as well. And I think I wanna redo all the seam sealer if I can. So as part of shaving the bay, I think I'm gonna end up removing all of this old seam sealer off of here. And I'm gonna pick up some fresh stuff from work and I'm gonna be able to smooth it out a lot nicer than what they did in the factory. So it'll be sealed and it'll look good at the same time. So it has come to my realization that I do not work on this car enough, and if I ever want to drive it again, I gotta get cracking on it. So I find that I make myself way too busy and I try to do too much stuff and I start too many projects and I never finish anything. So I'm setting myself a daily goal now. Obviously I have a day job, but normally when I come home in the evening, I'm tired, I want to relax, but there's no excuse anymore. I have to get to work on this car. So on weekdays, I'm setting aside 1 hour per day that I'm gonna work on this thing so that I can actually start making some good progress. On weekends, they're wide open. I can work as much as I want on it, but on weekdays, I gotta put in at least 1 hour. That's the goal. So I'm gonna hold myself accountable to that and hopefully we can start making some really good progress on it. So today, I think what I wanna get started on is starting to clean up all of these holes that I'm not gonna be using. Probably just start sanding them down. It is still a bit cold outside, so I don't want to open the door and start welding, but I think at the very least I want to get all these holes cleaned up. So we'll see how far we can get today. I got 1 hour to work on it today, so let's get to it. All right guys, update time. So I got a lot of the welding done on the frame rails and most of the places that I have access to. Then I also ground them flat, so they're looking pretty good now. There's some that I have to still touch up a little bit more because the welds left a little bit of pitting in there. So I'll touch them up and grind them flat again. I haven't touched the strut towers yet because there is a lot of undercoat on the other side of them. And I tried to weld one spot here and it kept setting on fire on the other side. and it's going to be a lot of hopping back and forth for me to put out fires all the time. So I think I'm going to wait until I have someone else here who can do fire watch for me, and then they can just kind of take the spray bottle and put out the fires as I make them. So that's about as far as I can get today until I can get some help here, but a lot of progress being made so far. All right guys, so we're a couple days later, and I've been going pretty hard on this, trying to get all the welding done. So I got both strut towers welded, and most of everything inside the bay is done. I haven't touched the firewall yet because I don't know exactly which holes I need to plug and which ones I need to keep with the wire tuck that I'm getting. So I'm gonna leave the firewall for now and just focus on the rest of everything else and try and get everything looking nice. So I've been doing a lot of grinding in here, and I ran into a problem. So this is my trusty old grinder that I've been using for the past 15 years. I think I paid about 20 bucks for it at Rona way back in the day. And yeah, it stopped working yesterday. It started overheating and got really hot in my hand. And now it doesn't do anything unless you hit it on the floor. Hey, there we go. Look at that. Anyway, I figured that probably wasn't the safest thing to use anymore. So I hit up the old Canadian Tire and picked up one of these. I think it was on sale for 40 bucks. So I'm gonna pop this thing open, see what we got, and put it to work. Yep, looks like a grinder to me.
One eternity later.
Well guys, after about a week of welding, grinding, sanding, welding, grinding, sanding, and more grinding, this is where I'm at. So I've got just about all the welding done in the bay, apart from the firewall. But for right now, I just wanted to make sure that I could get the strut towers looking nice and the frame rails looking nice. So because this metal is so thin, and because I'm using a flux core welder, even at the lowest setting, I was still burning holes. So every time I would grind it nice and flat, I would find more holes and more pitting that I would have to fill in. So there was a lot of rework that I had to do. The only problem that I'm facing now is there's some parts in the bay that my grinder will not reach. So back here, for instance, I can't get in there nicely with a grinder. I can't get these fully flat as I would like. There's a few down there. So I went and bought a die grinder, which is great, and it'll get the job done. But as you can see, I have no bit for it. I cannot find a bit for this thing that will grind metal anywhere in town. So I'm at a bit of a standstill now with getting the rest of the grinding finished in the engine bay. So something I've been working on is trying to get all the seam seal off of here. So there's big globs of it here and down here and running all back there, much similar to what we have here. So as you can see from the factory, they just globbed it on there and it looks terrible. And the reason I hate this is because once you start peeling it off, you start to find stuff like this and stuff like that. And I've already cleaned this part up, but you can still see the remnants. That was all rusty along there. So that was all rust that was hiding underneath the seam seal. So it all looked fine and sealed, but it actually wasn't. So what I'm gonna end up doing is having to chip away all the seam sealer. And I'm also gonna have to get into the wheel wells, clean up all this undercoat and get to the seam sealer there as well, so that I can get down to the rust, get it all cleaned up so it doesn't spread any farther. And then I'm gonna re-seam seal everything, and it's gonna actually look nice, it's gonna look clean, and it's not gonna be just globbed on there. Now there's a few more spots that I could weld, like there's a hole here, and this area here I still have to take care of, which I could weld today, but it's cold out again today. And typical Manitoba weather, they're actually calling for snow tomorrow. We're almost the end of May, and we're gonna get snow tomorrow. That's Manitoba. So I'm just gonna make do with what I got here. I'm gonna work on chipping away at the seam sealer here. Hopefully we can get a majority of it done today, and maybe I can do some more prep work on the firewall to see what I need to get welded, and see what holes I need to fill on the firewall. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so I made some decent progress on getting the seam seal removed in the engine bay. There's still a little bit left to do, but I want to move on to this now. I picked up some tools, so now I'll be able to get the rest of the welds cleaned up. So finally found some bits for my die grinder, and then also some wire wheels and a flat disc. So I should be able to access all the welds now and get them cleaned up and get them as flat as possible. So my goal is to use as little body filler as possible. So that's kind of why I use the welder to fill in as much as I could. Like there was a damage here, like a fairly significant dent. So I pounded it out as much as I could, and then I filled in the rest with weld, and then I kind of shaped it to the contours of the rest of this. So that way I don't have to use so much body fill in those areas. I'm just gonna be able to skim over it, and then it'll just have a thin coat in there. Trying to minimize as much body fill as possible so that it'll reduce the chance of it cracking. But yeah, that's the plan today, is I'm going to get to work using these die grinder bits and get the rest of the welds cleaned up. So let's get to it. Alright guys, well, these die grinder bits that I got didn't really end up working, but I found this old grinding stone buried in my tool chest, and it seems to be doing the trick. It's a little slow, but it does work, so that's kind of what I've been using. And basically all I'm doing is going over all the welds now and getting rid of any high spots so that when I do use body fill, it's going to be nice and flat. So I've basically finished all the welds up here. There's obviously some touching up that I'm gonna have to do yet, but I think I want to go through the whole engine bay and get rid of all the high spots first, and then I can touch up all the welds after. My compressor doesn't really keep up with using this tool continuously, so I gotta let the compressor catch up every once in a while. So while it's doing that, then I've been using the hammer and a chisel and getting rid of the rest of the seam seal. So I can kind of bounce back and forth so I can keep being productive. So I'm gonna work on that, and I'm gonna fast forward to when this is done because it's a lot of boring stuff, and then I'll show you guys once I'm done. All right guys, so I spent an entire day grinding and chiseling away the seam seal, and I got all the welds done, so they're pretty well flat, or they're lower, so when I do body fill, it'll come out flat. So there's a few spots I'm gonna have to touch up. I ground a little too far here where there was a captive nut, and same over here, so I'm gonna have to do some touch-up welding yet. Also, there's a few areas like here that I can see through, so I'm gonna try welding that from the other side so I can try and keep it flat on the inside of the engine bay. But yeah, really good progress was made today, and when I was on this side, I kind of cleaned up everything, so all the wiring is pushed through the firewall now. I got rid of the clutch master cylinder, so now everything is open here, and I have full access to everything. And while I was chiseling away the seam seal, I noticed some fiberglass here, and that's where my rust problem is coming from and where the water is coming from. So the way this was repaired, I'm guessing there was some kind of a rust hole there, and it was covered with fiberglass. And if I look through this part of the frame, you can see a hole inside. That's actually leading directly inside the car. So anytime there was any kind of water in here, that's where it would have been leaking through. And now if we get up under the dash, right up there, that's where the problem is. So you can see clearly where the rust is. You can also see up here where the rust was cut out, and there's a big hollow there where the fiberglass is. So I'm gonna have to do quite a bit of repair work under here so I can fix that hole. So that's something else I gotta add to the list yet to get that fixed. But for now, the priority is the engine bay. So I still got some work to do on the firewall yet, I now know exactly what holes need to be plugged and which ones need to be saved. So that's something I'm probably gonna work on in the next video. For now though, I think I'm gonna wrap up this video. This is about probably 2 to 3 weeks worth of work just in prepping this engine bay. So I think it's time I put all the footage together. I'll make a video for you guys, and then you guys kind of know what's going on. So if you guys like the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you're stoked about the progress, definitely let me know. Drop a comment below. And if you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do so, because I'm going hard on this thing and we're going to have a lot of content coming out. So stay tuned and we'll see you next time.